Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar in partnership with Expat Financial, Expat Info Desk, and of course Holborn Assets. Quick thank you to David and all the team at Expat Info Desk and Expat Financial for inviting us to speak to their members. It's always nice to be asked to share knowledge with the international community. It's great to be here. So then, Portugal's Golden Visa, the last chance to access the program at €280,000. A lot is happening in this particular space at the moment, and this is indeed the last chance to access Europe's premier route to a second citizenship and a very powerful European passport, 100% remotely and at this bargain price. Okay, now if we can actually move this presentation forward, there we go. To get started, so what are we going to cover in today's session? Well, we'll get started with some basic housekeeping, a little bit of background information. So introducing myself, I'm guessing this is the first time that you'll be seeing me. Also introducing the company that I represent, that is Holborn Assets, and how we work, of course. We'll then get into the nuts and bolts. So some basic questions to kick off. Firstly, why get a European passport? Why Portugal is widely considered the best route to this here in 2023. Then what is the Golden Visa itself? What are the criteria to qualify, and what do the process and timelines actually look like if you actually want to access the scheme? After that, we'll take a quick look at the legal context, which is very important given the fact that the scheme is changing. So we're going to look at what is happening now and the best course of action for those looking to access the scheme right now. We'll then look at some specific investment options which offer fast-track processing and market-leading risk management positions and ROI. Quick spoiler alert for you here. These are the final viable options in the real estate space, so do pay special attention to this part. Now, much of my own personal background is in the area of wealth management, so I will be focusing on how to select the best investment for you and the various risk factors to consider. We'll then wrap up with some frequently asked questions, so if you do have any further questions, we'll also cover them at the end. Please do drop them in the question box provided, and we will come to them once I reach the end of the presentation. Alternatively, feel free to drop me an email at any time, which you can do using the email address, which will be on your screen now. So there you go, right at the bottom there. So jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. Right, I promised you a quick word on myself and our company, Holborn Assets, to get started. We won't dwell on this too much. Of course, we're here to talk about Portugal, but who we are is important. We are a leading financial planning and investment management firm. We are a British wealth management firm. We have a track record that spans more than 25 years. We're a market leader in the Golden Visa space, but we also specialize in the areas of pensions, financial investments, property investments, working with clients in the offshore market. So that is to say, our core market are expats, just like you most likely are, considering that you are readers of Expat Info Desk and Expat Financial. We're actually one of the largest financial advisories worldwide. We serve over 20,000 clients across more than 100 different countries now, and we do manage over $3 billion worth of their assets. We also have a 100% success rate track record on Portugal Golden Visas. And we have now helped more than 1,000 people get residency in Portugal via this way. Naturally, we are a client-centric business and we are regulated in our markets of operation. That includes by the Financial Conduct Authority in the United Kingdom and in the European Union via our European head office. That one is actually based in Cyprus, although of course we do have offices in Spain and Portugal. We are multi-award winners, extremely proud of our 4.8 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, more than 2,000 reviews now, so I do need to update that graphic a little bit, but do check us out over on there if you'd like to know a little bit more. I'm a senior manager here at Holborn, one of the leading residency by investment specialists working today. I've personally helped more than 100 people now secure their Portuguese residency. So if you would like to work with me and my expert team at any point, then do just drop me a line. Happy to help and guide you in any way that we can. Okay, about us, tick. Now, why should you want a European passport? The value here really is the freedom that it gives you. Once you have your passport, you can live, retire, work or study or even open a business in any one of the 27 EU member states. It does not matter which country issues you the passport. As long as it's an EU passport, you can go where you please within the Schengen area. You can also use your new passport to travel visa-free to 185 countries around the world, broader than the Schengen area. So why do we look at Portugal then? Now, this slide shows the most popular golden visa programs that are available. There are, of course, several more that we work with as well, but these are the major ones. There is one program that stands out. Of course, this will not come as a surprise to you given the topic of today's session. And this is, of course, the go-to for most non-Europeans looking to acquire an EU passport. This is, of course, Portugal. Why is that the case? Well, a couple of factors. Two, to be specific. Number one, it is one of the cheapest programs that exist, not just in terms of Europe, but also around the world. Now, at the time of this session, and of course, this is going to be changing very soon, it's one of the reasons for the session, qualifying investments start at just €280,000. And in comparison, neighboring Spain is almost double this at €500,000. I said two reasons. The second reason is actually the main reason to choose the golden visa, and that is the physical stay requirement. Whereas other countries will require you to become a tax resident and live there full time, Portugal does not. In fact, you only have to visit for an average of 1 week per year to qualify for full Portuguese citizenship and that EU passport, of course, after just 5 years. So if you take the decision to buy property in Portugal, you can carry on living wherever you are right now, and after 5 years, you can obtain a second European passport for your whole family. The only other condition is that you learn a basic level of Portuguese before your new passport is achieved, and that is simply to show ties to Portugal. That does, of course, beg the question, do you think you could invest some of your capital and spend 1 week a year in Portugal for the next 5 years on average and learn some basic Portuguese along the way? If you're with me so far, and if you're joining this session, I like to think the answer would be yes, at which point you could be interested in learning more about the Portugal Golden Visa. Well, you're in luck if that's the case, because that's exactly what we're going to do now. So, what is the Portugal Golden Visa? What is the background? Well, essentially it was launched in 2012, so over 10 years old now, and it has since gathered popularity over the years, has proven extremely popular now, and is the most accessible route to a European passport. You can include the whole family, so spouse, dependent children, and parents. There are some exceptions, of course, so we will need to have a chat if you do have individual questions about your own family circumstances. One other quick caveat as well: if you are a Russian national, I'm afraid the current international sanctions do prevent you from accessing this scheme, but if you are not, then this is fairly broad. You'll be interested to know that my team here has now managed over 10% of all the Portuguese golden visas ever issued. So if you work with us, you will be working with an expert and a market leader. There are several routes to take. All of them are investment routes, of course. The golden visa is an investor visa at its heart. Property, real estate is by far the most attractive. So this is what we're going to be focusing on. It's also the route that is closing, imminently, and we will be going into that in just a second, which is why we're focusing on that in today's session. Now, I suppose I've kind of spoiled that a little bit, but there are 5 main investment routes to take, which we'll just break down very, very quickly to give you the full context. The first option at the top of your screen there is transferring at least €1 million in cash into a Portuguese bank account. Now, I wouldn't personally recommend that, given the state of inflation at the moment around the world. There's a lot more that you could and should be doing with that cash. Frankly, $1 million is a lot of capital to commit for no return. And incidentally, this route to the golden visa is also being shut down. Less controversial and less popular, so no one's really too fussed about that particular one, surprisingly. The second route is investing €500,000 into Portuguese funds. Now, getting the right fund can be tricky, so you do need to know what you're doing here. I will be talking about this more later on in the year in other channels, and we may well be organizing another webinar to discuss that particular point. So do keep an eye out for communications on that one. But for now, stepping down a level, let's look at real estate, which, as I mentioned, starts at €280,000. This is by far the most flexible and most popular route, so we will focus on this, as I mentioned. There are also routes to the visa via a cultural donation of 250,000 euros. Now, I say donation rather than investment, because investing in the arts almost never generates a return. So for all intents and purposes, it is essentially a donation. And the final route is opening a business, generating or creating, I should say, employment for 8 people in Portugal. It's actually 10 people across most parts of the country, but that drops down to 8 if you set up your business in a low density area. Maybe not the smartest or most reasonable route to a golden visa, I should say, simply because low density area tends to limit what you can do unless it's an online business. Why is real estate the most attractive route out of all 5 then? Well, essentially because it offers a lot more flexibility versus the other routes on the table. With the right partner and the right investment, you can have the yields paid to you up front, a relatively low investment amount compared to the other routes, a place to stay for free, oftentimes, when you need to come to Portugal, and more importantly, a built-in exit strategy via a guaranteed buyback once your passports have been obtained. It's also very straightforward. The amount of mental energy and investment that goes into acquiring real estate and holding that for the term is far less than devising a business plan and employing 10 plus employees at significant personal risk in a country. So real estate tends to be the go-to. All right, that's a little bit of the background. So let's now run through the process required to obtain your golden visa. This is a simplified version of the process. This is all leading up to obtaining your golden visa residence permit. The whole thing takes around 12 months. And as you can see, we can do most of this from the comfort of your home. Now, this includes the kickoff, which is essentially where we will sign client agreements, establish your administrative presence in Portugal. What does that mean? That means getting your tax number, beginning the process of opening your bank account, setting up a power of attorney so that our lawyers can purchase the property in your name. We'll then ask you to send the funds over to Portugal. Most likely, given the timelines that we're currently working to, we will be using a lawyer escrow account for the receipt of those funds, simply because opening a bank account remotely is now taking too long in the context of the timelines that we have for the changing in the law. And then once we've got those funds in escrow, we will sign something called a CPCV, which is essentially a promissory sales and purchase agreement with the developer. Now, we can reach this stage all within a matter of just 2 weeks, as long as you are able to work quickly with our team. Strongly suggest that you do that, simply because we are very much against the clock to get everyone over the line with an ARI number before the law changes. Now, I mentioned the ARI number. That 2-week milestone is key because that is the timeline to get your application submitted on the online platform to the Portuguese immigration authorities. When we do that, we will get your ARI number out. ARI is essentially the technical term for the golden visa. When we have your ARI number, which is essentially your golden visa case number, that essentially secures you grandfather rights to access the golden visa in the event of a subsequent change in the legislation. So by getting your ARI number before the law changes, you will be in the system and protected from the subsequent changes in the rules, which are imminent. Okay, once your ARI number is obtained, we will then use the funds in the escrow account, most likely, to complete the purchase. It is now just a matter of time once that's done before we have everything sorted and we get your cards issued. A little bit of admin, but that's very much on our side, so I won't bore you with that. Once that has all been handled, we will then invite you to come over to Portugal for the biometric appointment. This is the first and only time in the entire process that we actually require you to be physically present in Portugal. Once that's done, you'll give your fingerprints, take a couple of photos with the police. We will then take care of the rest. And then once the cards have been printed, issued, and couriered out to your home address, you will then be a legal resident of Portugal and well on your way to becoming eligible for that dual nationality and that second passport after just 5 years. Mentioning 5 years in that case, what does the timeline and process actually look like once we've got the golden visa cards? I mentioned it's a 5-year hold to get citizenship. Those 5 years begin on the date that the golden visa is actually printed. The residence permits are actually printed. The golden visa itself, the residence permit, is valid for a 2-year period. So after the expiry of that golden visa, or that first iteration, we do need to renew it. So we will renew it for a further 2 years, total of 4 years. We'll then renew it again for a further 2 years, which takes us to 5 years required for the citizenship, at which point we can submit the citizenship application on your behalf, provided that the ongoing criteria have been met. And I, of course, mentioned that that involves holding the investment for the term and, of course, passing that language test to demonstrate sufficient ties to Portugal. The legal context then, touched upon it a little bit. Let's just explain what is exactly happening. Now, the legal context around the Portugal Golden Visa is a bit of a hot button. To be frank, it has been a hot button for pretty much the entirety of 2023. The government had initially announced that it would be scrapping the Golden Visa entirely. They did mention that back in February. I'm very happy to report that that is, of course, no longer the case. However, real estate will no longer qualify in any form. This, therefore, will ultimately raise the minimum investment threshold to 500,000 euros. And that is, of course, assuming that we ignore the donation route to culture and the arts. Investment funds, if I can get my words out, apologies. Investment funds will now become the staple route to the Golden Visa. And we will, in fact, be announcing some rather innovative solutions for that later on in the year. So do stay tuned. I'm sure we will be in touch via the various channels to let you know about that. But be sure to keep an eye out for when that becomes relevant. Now, the law changes that are coming in, these had initially actually cleared Portuguese Parliament back in July. They have since been vetoed by the president, which was a bit of an unorthodox step on his behalf. Great news for us, though, because it gives us more time and it means that we can have this webinar session today and we still have a window of opportunity. However, that being said, the new legislation is now set to be forced through as the Prime Minister and his socialist government do maintain a majority in Parliament. And essentially the way politics works in Portugal, they are now in a position where they can force that new legislation through if they want, either with amendments or exactly as the bill was previously, and ultimately force the president to ratify what he initially vetoed. Now, that is pretty much certain to happen. That is very likely to be happening later this month. That is, of course, September, with the law most likely taking effect from early October. Of course, we cannot guarantee these timelines in any way, but it is better to act fast to avoid disappointment, because that time frame could shift sooner as much as shifting later. So, where does this actually leave you as a potential Golden Visa investor? Well, you now have two options. So option one is the less pressured route. That is to wait for the new law to take effect, to analyze the new scenario and to find a qualifying investment fund in which to invest a cool €500,000. Option two, however, may be more your cup of tea. It is also a very, very good opportunity, and the reason for this session. Here, if we were to get started straight away with a real estate investment, starting at 280,000 euros and up, and aim to have all paperwork submitted before the law is ratified. If we are able to select the right investment, there is a very, very good chance of beating this deadline at the time of this webinar, provided we're able to act fast. So this one does carry a little bit more time pressure. We do need to act quickly. But if you do like the sound of option two, I would ask you to consider the following two questions. So number one, does my investment offer a 100% refund guarantee if I miss the deadline? This is very important at this current stage. You do not want to lose anything if the law changes quickly. Now, ourselves here at Holborn Assets, we have extended our money-back guarantee. It is a 100% money-back guarantee to certain investment options, which will include all of the investment options I will take you through in just a moment. So if we do miss the deadline for any reason, all funds that have been paid up to that point will be 100% refundable, and the deal can be completely unwound. So we will essentially underwrite the risk for all of our clients there. Secondly, the second question I would ask you to consider, what is my plan B if the deadline is missed? So is that refund guarantee the best option? Or if I do miss the deadline, am I able to roll up to 500k if I really need to? Is that the most preferential route for me? And if that's the case, am I working with a global partner that can ensure my interests are looked after in the best possible way? Now, shameless plug for my business here, Holborn Assets. We are, of course, financial advisors, wealth managers, investment managers. So if anyone is in a good place to administer a fund and provide advice on that, it is quite frankly us. Okay, so that is process and legal context. Now, I mentioned investment options. Let's take a look at a couple now. What I'm going to show you are, in my opinion, the leading options in Portugal currently. Now, here at Holborn Assets, we work with a large number of potential investments. However, we will be focusing on the top three that are in the market today. First one will be a Wyndham hotel. The second will be a Hilton hotel. And the third will be an office space recently vacated by Google in the heart of Lisbon. Getting started, then, number one is an investment called Hotel Globo. This is actually a Days Inn hotel, which is part of the Wyndham Group. Of course, one of the largest hotel companies in the world. It is a 280,000 euro co-ownership project that offers a great rental yield at this price point and extensive guarantees. Now, I really like this one a lot, purely for its accessibility, the security, the risk position, and the return on investment that is available in the context of investments at the 280k level. We will go into that now, but this really is standout for me. We are talking about a redevelopment project here of an existing hotel. This is great. Now, it might not look very flashy from the outside, from this picture here. However, when we talk about an existing hotel, a building that is standing, that is structurally sound, that is wonderful, simply because it minimizes construction risk. Myself, as a wealth manager, risk is my primary consideration. One of my primary focuses, if not my number one focus, is just to make sure that my clients do not lose money at any stage. Now, this particular hotel is already built, as you can see. It is just being extended, as you can see from this green area to the top and to the left of the second image on your screen there, and also undergoing a full renovation. So what does this mean? It means, of course, that the liquidity risk, the developer risk, is very much mitigated here, because we're not talking about a ruined building that requires extensive reconstruction. So a comfortable investment to make. Now, Days Inn is a mid-level hotel brand. We're not talking luxury per se, but the renovation standard is going to be up to a 4-star level, which is at the high end of what you'd expect for a Days Inn. That being said, bear in mind, we are not looking for a place that you would personally choose to live in, or even necessarily use as a holiday hotel. What we are looking for here, in the context of this conversation, for getting a second citizenship, is the best possible investment in the most secure manner that gets you the best return, and ultimately that secures you your golden visa and your passport. So I would strongly urge you, as part of my role here, I would strongly urge you to look at this rationally, wearing our financial analysis hat rather than our holiday hat, which can be the trap when we look at investments such as this. As I mentioned, Days Inn is a Wyndham hotel brand, so you do, of course, have the peace of mind that comes with the association with a global powerhouse of the hospitality industry. On your screen here, you can see a couple of renders of the standard of the finished renovation will be held to. In terms of the location, the hotel is in a place called Mirandela do Bragança, which is a short hop to the Spanish border and an hour and a half away from the city of Porto. Remember, I know I've just said this, but it does bear repeating. You are not selecting a place to live or a place to take a holiday. So even though the location may not be the most typical option of Lisbon, Porto, or the Algarve itself, the financial case is what needs to take priority here. How good is the risk position? How good is the return? How good is my exit strategy? And as your advisor, I would urge you to look at those, the fundamentals of the investment offered. It's a calculated decision, one that makes sense when we look at the key metrics behind this particular investment case. And those are the following. So this is a smaller capital raise than your typical golden visa investment project, looking for just 80 investors and just 23 million euros. Now, I like to see this because typically smaller projects do carry lower inherent risk, especially when a well-reputed developer is involved, such as is the case here. Now, what do you get for your 280,000 euro investment? In return, you will own a percentage of the hotel itself. Your name will be added to the title deed. The investment pays an upfront rental yield of 30,000 euro in addition to having VAT on the construction works paid for you and also purchase tax, the IMT, paid for you by the developer. So as a total financial package, this really is outstanding at this price point, and it is very much standout in the market. Now, in terms of the buyback, that is offered to you after you achieve citizenship. That will usually be around 6 years after the purchase, once processing times are considered. Of course, we can't guarantee exact timelines. And you will, of course, have 7 days free stay across a selection of Wyndham hotels in Portugal. The second option I have to share with you is a recently announced project with quite a bit more construction involved than the days in option. Now, that is interesting given the legal context that I've just outlined to you, but it's not surprising at all once you consider just how many golden visa investors are looking to get onto the program before it ends at this price point. Now, what we have here is a 5-star Hilton hotel. It's right on the beachfront in the Algarve, right in the heart of the Algarve between Holborn and Portimao. Again, it's a co-ownership project set at the 280,000 minimum entry point. This is very much your classic golden visa investment case. What does that mean? It means that there's no actual rental return here, but the developer will cover the taxes and fees on the deal for you. It's a store of capital until citizenship. So the financial case isn't as strong as the days in option that we've just seen. So, you may be asking the question, justifiably so, why on earth would I want to choose this one? The short answer is location, in addition to working with a brand such as Hilton. Now, what you're losing out on in terms of return on investment, you actually do gain in attractiveness of the underlying hotel offer. So this hotel is, as I mentioned, in the heart of the Algarve, in Alvor. If you've seen any of my previous content, any of my previous webinars, YouTube videos, anything like that, you may not be. This is the first time that we have been invited to speak with Expat Financial and Expat Info Desk, but if you have seen anything that I've done before, you will know that this particular area of Portugal is an area of particular strategic focus for us as a business for golden visa investments. It is a very attractive spot and also qualifies as an area of low population density despite being in the Algarve, which of course allows it to qualify for the cheapest possible entry point of 280,000 euros in the country. It's a very attractive spot financially, but it's also an attractive spot in terms of a holiday destination. And in terms of investment into a sun and beach focused hotel, it's a very compelling place to invest. It's also, of course, surrounded by incredible beaches and some of the best golf courses in Europe. A little bit more on the location here, a bit more detail. Portimao, which you may or may not be familiar with, very popular fishing town. It's a short drive away, and comes with some attractions. It's also the home of the Formula One. Usually, when Formula One comes to Portugal, sometimes they'll go to Estoril, but oftentimes it will come to Portimao. The charming village of Alvor is also right on the hotel's doorstep. And as I mentioned, you do have a selection of beaches to choose from, as you can see on the screen there, in addition to a beautiful golf course right on your doorstep. Although, of course, I say your doorstep, it is not your doorstep, it is the hotel's doorstep. In terms of the investment, as per the last option, it is a fractional ownership model wherein you invest 280,000 euros and will receive 280,000 euros back when the hotel developer buys you out, which will occur from year 6 and is intended to align with citizenship, as is the case with the days in. Now, the financial package on offer here is, of course, reduced versus the days in option, but it is still attractive, considering that the developer covers all taxes. In this particular case, that works out at around 20k. Now, as per the Days Inn, the Hilton option offers you free stay of 7 days per year in this or any of the developers' other hotels in Portugal. This is a larger developer, so you will have even more choice on where to stay. But as your advisor, I would recommend that you consider free stay is not a core part of a major investment decision such as this, such as any property investment. The monetary value of 7 days stay in an average hotel would only come out to, let's pluck a number out of the air. Let's say 1,500 euros, give or take. It is not a core part of your investment decision. It certainly should not, even though it's an attractive fringe benefit, and you cannot live in this investment. The hotel project here is more ambitious than the Days Inn. It requires more than 4 times the funding. Now, as an investment manager, I would personally interpret that as being higher risk inherently than the Days Inn option. But then when you consider the inherent solvency of the particular developer in question here, highly reputable developer, this remains a very low risk investment and one that we are very happy to recommend to our clients. And number three, this one is a little bit more expensive, but it's potentially the star of the show today. Now, this is a co-working space in Lisbon, prime central Lisbon to be exact. We've only just announced this project, so you'll be one of the first people actually seeing this project, and we are extremely excited about it. What is it specifically? It is a co-working office right in the heart of Lisbon in a district called Estrela. If you're familiar with Lisbon, you'll know just how important the Estrela district is. This is a finished building, as you can see on the photo, but there is so much more to this investment case than that. Let's get started by taking a quick look at the neighborhood. So the Estrela district is one of Lisbon's most prestigious areas, right in the heart of the city, prime location, one of the most well-to-do areas in the country. This particular building is located just 300 meters from Parliament and 300 meters away from the Prime Minister Antonio Costa's residence. So this is a terrible joke, but I like telling it, and I'll tell you as well. In theory, once you get your golden visa card out, if you wanted to go and visit the building, you can. We could then go in and we could wave our golden visa residence cards out of the window at the Prime Minister's house, and basically show him how he managed to beat his law change and his deadline. If you're into that kind of pettiness, which can be fun. But anyway, each to their own. A little bit more on the building before we get sidetracked. So it's 600 meters away from the iconic Basílica da Estrela, which you can see on the top right of your screen. And the area itself is home to a great many embassies, which you can see on that slide. That just shows you the political relevance and status of this area. Now, universities such as the Lisbon School of Economics and Management and many others are also based in Estrela. So in terms of location for an investment, when capital security is your goal, you really cannot do better than this. This really is one of the safest places that you can place your hard-earned capital in Portugal. Okay, that's the location covered. What are the key numbers then? So we're talking about 350,000 euros for a 5% share of this particular building. Now, the quick-witted amongst you will notice that means there is space for a maximum of 20 investors of 5% each, and it values the building at 7 million euros. Interestingly, we've had an independent appraisal of the building, which has come back at a higher valuation than that. So this is very much a fair price for the investment sort of being asked for. This is a 700 square meter building, previously tenanted by Google. Interestingly enough, they have now vacated and moved to bigger offices. I cannot share the details of the historic rental income of this property, but I can assure you that the underlying margins on this asset are outstanding, for want of a better word. The building is now being repurposed away from long-term rent, actually, and actually into the short-term co-working space. The reason that's being done, essentially, Lisbon is now a hub for digital nomads and remote workers. And inherently, the short-term rental space does carry higher margins than the long-term rental market. So that does enhance the viability of this asset even further. Now, as you'd expect with an investment of this ilk, it is equipped with all key amenities. So we are talking about a serviced restaurant, a kitchen for self-catering, shower facilities, full bathroom facilities, everything you'd expect of a building of this type. The developer offers investors a fixed rate of return for this particular investment. So 73,500 euros gross in return for a rental period of 7 years. Now that is more than enough to secure your citizenship and then enforce the guaranteed buyback thereafter, which will happen at the 350,000 euro mark, which is the same as the capital buy-in point. Now, the amount of renovations required on this project are minimal. It is the lowest amount of renovation work I have personally seen on a renovation project in the Portuguese golden visa space. Now, that is wonderful because, again, that reduces the risk of the investment to the investor because it reduces the budget, timeframes, and work that is required by the developer. The risk of the project going incomplete is pretty much zero. Now, remember, an approved renovation project in Portugal does reduce the required capital investment. In Lisbon, particularly, it reduces it down from a minimum threshold of 500,000 euro, which is what would be the case for a new build or a non-qualifying investment project. Reduces it down to the minimum entry point of 350,000 euro, in line with the entry point at this particular investment. The renovation part is a fundamental part of any investment case at the 350k mark in Lisbon. As I mentioned, the work required is very, very small indeed, purely cosmetic, and so the construction risk on this investment is therefore virtually zero, which is music to my ears as an asset manager. A couple of photos now just to show you the current status. Now, as you can see, we're talking about a building that requires some cosmetic renovations. This is just a snapshot of the building. It doesn't show the full building, but it's just to give you an idea of the current standard. The renovation work required is cosmetic, not structural in any way. So, with some minor TLC, the final product will be fantastic. So I know we're talking about a minimum entry point of 280k and the last chance to get onto the Portuguese golden visa at 280k. But if your budget will allow you to stretch to 350,000 euros, this truly is a fantastic opportunity, the best in the market currently, to invest in the heart of the capital of Portugal and get a highly secure route to your European passport with frankly, the best capital protection available in the market today with the lowest downside risk. So I know I'm waxing lyrical a little bit about this investment case, but this is one that is exclusive to my team. We've worked hard to put this together and we've done everything we can to make it the best in the market. So it is what it is. You can probably see why we're excited about it. But anyway, those are the top 3 investment cases in the country today. They will probably be the top 3 investment cases in the country until the program closes to real estate investors. So really what you see is what you get. So I would urge you to get in touch if you would like to discuss one of those investment cases, because once they are gone, and they are very unlikely to be replaced at this late stage. Okay, moving on then. So some frequently asked questions, just to clear up some common issues. I don't know how many questions have come in just yet, but do drop some in the Q&A box provided if you'd like us to cover that in the next slide. But just to cover some broad strokes. Can my road to citizenship be compromised after the law changes is a very important question I'm frequently asked. No, the changes in the law cannot be backdated to retroactively affect you. This is in contravention of the Portuguese constitution. It cannot happen. This is why it's so important that we get your ARI number ahead of the law changing. Just to reiterate, I know we've covered this already, but what are the requirements needed for citizenship? We need to pass an A2 level language test. Every single person on the application, so your children, parents, spouse, need to complete this language test. You can take it as many times as you like during the qualifying period for citizenship. You could fail it again and again and again and again if you want to. You just need to pass that test at some point. Now, A2 is essentially one step up from beginner. So with a little bit of study, it should be a formality for most. Okay, next question. Can I add more family members later? Yes, you don't all have to jump on the application at the same time. However, remember, the route to citizenship requires 5 years of legal residency. So that may mean that you need to extend the length of time that you hold the investment in order to make sure that everyone on the application has held that investment for the full 5 years and qualifies for citizenship. Otherwise, they may not be able to move on to citizenship after the golden visa, which is, of course, the end goal for most people doing this process. Can I invest in residential real estate instead? Question I'm asked so frequently. People tend to be so much more comfortable with residential real estate, simply because it's what they know. Few things to bear in mind. Now, many areas of Portugal, in fact, the most popular areas in which you can invest, no longer qualify for residential real estate. The coast does not qualify for residential real estate. Neither does Lisbon nor Porto. So you're going to have to look at a low density area in terms of population, an area that has a poor investment outlook. It's more difficult to rent. It's more difficult to maintain a high occupancy rate. And also, given the current context, very, very difficult to get a residential property that qualifies and meets all of the necessary criteria for the golden visa, and get that over the line before the golden visa law changes. And of course, with residential, it's very, very difficult to have something like a buyback guarantee, which lets you recover your capital and then use that to ultimately go and have no restrictions on where you want to invest in residential real estate if your end goal is to invest in a family home. And then, of course, if you want to recover your capital, you're not tied to Portugal. If you have Portuguese citizenship, you can then select wherever it is that you want to be across the EU to invest in your residence, and you will have the right to reside there. Something that's not the case if you're looking for a qualifying residential investment straight off the bat, which is usually a poor decision. And finally, what are the documentation requirements? Now, that can be a little bit more complicated. That varies family to family. So after we've got in touch, we've had a chat, we've agreed the investment, and we get started, our team will walk you through each step when needed. Part of that will be producing a bespoke documentation requirement list that we will work on with you. It may include, well, it will include things such as a police clearance certificate or a criminal record. It may include marriage certificates if there's a spouse involved, birth certificates if we're talking about children. There will, of course, be some other documentation. We will go through that with you at the appropriate moment. Okay, now, for a starter session on the Portugal Golden Visa and how to access this before the law changes, I think that's a fairly comprehensive session. But, of course, there's lots more that we could be talking about, and there's a lot more that we could potentially cover. So I look forward to opening up that question box now and seeing what's been dropped there. If you're not comfortable asking a question in this semi-public forum, then do feel free to drop me an email instead. So my details, once again, jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. I try to come back to all correspondence within 24 hours whenever I can. Sometimes that's not possible, but usually I'm good at coming back same day. So don't be shy. I do love hearing from people that attend my webinars. It's a pleasure to connect and help in any way that I can. If you'd like to book in a personal meeting, one-to-one, then viewers of this webinar can do so completely free of charge. Just scan that QR code that's on your screen there. That will take you to a calendar booking widget, which will allow you to book a half-an-hour session completely free of charge into my diary. And we will look at your family circumstances, completely no obligation, of course, to work together. We will examine what is the best route to your goals, assuming that would be a European citizenship if you're attending this webinar, making sure that Portugal is indeed the right route, making sure that the golden visa is indeed the right visa, and then making sure we identify the right investment for you, and then issue you with a bespoke quotation that is tightly adjusted to your requirements, and making sure that we deliver value for money in your Portuguese second citizenship journey. Okay, so that's pretty much everything from me. So I'm going to try to open up this question box now and see if anything has come in. And it looks like, well, me going on about all of the questions I was looking to answer, and I can't see a single one. So either I've delivered a fantastic session, or more likely, you guys are a little bit shy on that point. So I'll give it a couple of seconds with some closing remarks. If you do have a question, drop it in there now. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up for the day, sign off, and let you all go about your business. Without in the absence of any further questions, it has been an absolute pleasure to walk you through the Portuguese Golden Visa today. Once again, thank you very much to the good people at Expat Info Desk and Expat Financial for inviting us to speak to their members. It is good to reach new people with important messages such as how to get a second citizenship, which can be so life-affirming and life-changing in the case of so many people. So yes, thank you to the good people there. One question has just come in, so I'll answer that quickly before we disappear. Mark, thank you very much for dropping this question. I was afraid that there was going to be a little bit of a tumbleweed moment and a little bit of a ghost town in the Q&A. The question, do you personally help with Spain? Yes, I do help with Spain. Now, the Spanish Golden Visa tends to be less attractive. It's much less demanded than the Portuguese Golden Visa for a number of reasons. It doesn't offer remote citizenship in the way that Portugal does. You do have to live there if you want to get citizenship. If you want to just keep renewing the Spanish Golden Visa, you can, and there's no residency requirements for that. So we can go into that in a one-to-one session, Mark. The investment required is 500k. And, if you do want Spanish citizenship, Spain doesn't offer dual citizenship, unfortunately, so you would have to renounce your current citizenship. And it is a 10-year hold to get to qualify for the citizenship. Spain is a little more of a niche use case. Usually people that want Spain are people that ultimately want to live in Spain and just have unlimited access and can hold. But yes, we can help you with that. Just reach out. Caroline, another question. Thank you. We're starting to get some momentum. That's brilliant. What are the deadlines for these 3 investments? All 3 investments that I've presented to you today, we can turn them around inside a total processing time of 2 weeks. So right now, you can consider a total turnaround time of 2 weeks on all of them equally and purely take a decision based on what is the right fit for my, requirements in terms of return on investment, location, capital security. If 2 weeks is the deadline, 2 weeks is the deadline to get to the ARI number, which means that we have essentially the date that the new legislation enters into effect, minus 2 weeks to get started. And that's if we want to cut it really fine. Now, I would urge you to reach out by no later than the end of next week for a one-to-one, with a view to taking a decision by no later than the end of next week. Today is the 13th of September, so we're starting to look towards sort of the 3-quarter mark in September to take that decision, because we anticipate the new legislation taking effect early October, probably the 2nd week in October, if you press me and hold me to it, at which point, we need to have wheels in motion before the last week in September, really. So apologies, Caroline, it's a very rambly way of answering your question, but ultimately you would need to take a decision if those timelines are in fact correct by the end of next week. But we can't guarantee it because we don't know how quickly the Portuguese powers that be will act, and they may act quicker, but Portugal does have a habit of dragging their feet somewhat, so we could even have more time, but always act faster to avoid disappointment, and we will always work as fast as you can work. I hope that makes sense. Well, thank you both for asking the questions, and giving me a little bit of time at the end there to explore a new topic. Yes, that's pretty much everything that I had for you. Like I say, if you have any further questions, feel free to book in a one-to-one using the QR code that's on your screen there. If you can't scan that QR code, if you're watching this on your mobile phone, then just request a meeting via jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. It is a pleasure to set up a meeting. And Caroline, just a quick follow-up question, just to clarify, all 3 investments would return the capital? Yes, and all 3 investments return the capital at the same buy-in point, so there is no capital gain or loss on the deal. The return on investment is twofold. The return on investment is the rental yield, so the 73,500 euros for the case in Lisbon, and the 30k plus taxes, which are covered for you in the event of the days in, and of course the taxes only in the event of the Hilton. But no capital gain or loss, and that buyback level is fixed. But yes, they do all return the capital. So you've got no underlying exposure essentially to the asset itself. Your underlying exposure is to the developer, because they are the ones that are buying you back. I hope that makes sense. Right, guys, time to wrap up for the day, I think. But like I say again, pleasure to have you with us. Do get in touch if you'd like us to go through anything one-to-one. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. And whether it's with us, whether it's with, going your own way, I wish you all the very best of success in your journey towards second citizenship and a European future for you and your family. As a Brit that was affected by Brexit now living in Europe, I can tell you just how much it can change your life, having the whole continent open to you. A little bit of a source of personal regret, that one. But fortunately, things like the golden visa do exist. Right, I will stop my waffling and let you go about your merry way. So thank you again for joining me today. Thank you to Expat Info Desk and Expat Financial. All the very best to everyone here. Have a wonderful day and hopefully speak to you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.